Good afternoon, it's Jim in beautiful Beaverton, Oregon. So it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it's almost dark. It is a terrible day out there. It's 40 degrees with a cold, cold rain coming down. It snowed just a touch last night, and it's just warm enough not to snow. So it's really painful to be outside, but fortunately on a day like that, you can come in here and kind of get away from it. You know, like you get cabin fever. You go to the mall, you know, and there's a million people with Christmas shopping. So it's just wonderful to have somewhere to go that's not inside anymore. So anyhow, we're out here. We got 4 lamps going. We got the heat candle stove going. And it's, as I say, it's 40 degrees outside. It's currently 60 degrees in here. And the water temperature is 50 degrees. So tonight when this cools down and we're only running 2, the water will heat it up and it will cool down, and then everything goes in reverse the next day. So anyhow, what I wanted to talk about today is, this being winter time, there's not much going on. It's the time to plant. So if you have kind of come to the conclusion that maybe you want to try an aquaponics system, but you don't know quite what or where to put it, this little video we're doing today is going to maybe help you with the places that you could put one around the house and eliminate those places maybe where you can't. So you'll come a little closer to figuring out what you want to do. So first of all, to my knowledge, there are 3 different basic types of small aquaponics systems, and I've got one of each. There's this one, which is in a greenhouse, a heated greenhouse, that we maintain a certain temperature all year round, cool and hot. The other choice is an outdoor setup, which is what I have just out the window, which is basically, it's covered with a tarp now, but if it was uncovered, you could walk right in there, and it's unheated unless I'm going to do it just for freeze damage, so an unheated setup. And the third setup would be in the house, where you could have a complete indoor setup with LED lighting, which is what I have in my small room in there. So anyhow, you could have any one of those 3, but there are certain requirements that all of them have. So let's just go over some of those. Number 1 requirement, and very important, is security. You have water, you have electricity, you have fish, all these things, so you have to make sure that little kids or pets or any variety of vermin can't get to them, or you do your best not to make that happen. So security is important, including people from the outside. You're better off to have something like this in the backyard than the front yard. If you want somebody to see it, you want you to be the guy that showed it to them. So anyhow, that's number 1. Number 2 is you need power of some sort. You don't need a lot of power, but you need it. So in every system I've got and everything that I know anything about, you would use a GFI plug, 120 volt. It can be done with solar and things like that, but I have no knowledge of how to do it, so I'm not going to try and tell you how to do it. I'm only going to tell you the kind of stuff I do. So you need power as close as possible to your pump. Every system is going to have a water pump. A lot of systems will have an air pump, such as this, and then anything indoor or in a greenhouse is going to have fans, such as this fan and this fan over here to your right. And also an exhaust fan. But these units do not require a great deal of electricity. There's no heating load on here, so it isn't really a big deal, but you do need power as close as possible, and it's something you have to prepare for. The next thing I want to talk about, there's kind of a couple combined. We'll call the first part of it elevation. In an aquaponics system, the sump, which is where the pump and the water is, at the very bottom of the system, has to be below the fish tanks, or it won't work, because you're pumping water up to the fish tanks and the grow bed for the same exact thing. You're pumping water up, and the water then flows by gravity back down again. So you have to be able to accommodate that. In the best possible scenario is what we got here, where the whole sump is underground. So if you could dig a big hole, put your sump right like that, that's the best possible thing. The next best, excuse me, in this system, you can't see it, I have the fish tank, and which is also a sump, buried halfway in the ground. It's 1 foot deep, which works pretty well. It's a 2-foot tank, so now I'm a foot above ground. And then the least desirable way, and the way that I have inside that you have to accommodate, is to have something flat on the floor, so you would be basically at this level. But obviously you can't dig a hole in your family room, or you probably shouldn't. So an interesting rule of thumb, something you can keep in mind, if you're going to set your grow beds at waist high or thereabouts, and your fish tank is on the floor, we'll say here, you can't come up more than a foot, or you won't be able to make the connection. So just kind of keep that in mind. Anyhow, let's see here. The next thing I want to talk about is weight. This greenhouse is purpose-built. If you notice, the decking is about 18 inches above ground level, and all of the water, the sump, and these 3 tanks are sitting on blocks, which in turn are sitting on the ground. So the only water of any kind that is actually on the deck is what's in the grow beds, which is not a lot. If you take the total of these 4 tanks, you have 600 gallons of water, which is about 5,000 pounds just water. So 2.5 tons of water weight. What I'm getting at with this is, if you put it on your deck or something, you have to keep that in mind. There's a lot of weight there. And even a small system gets heavy real fast. One more critical thing that I want to talk about is, in a system which has water and pumps and plumbing, you have to expect that it's possible you're going to have a critical failure, and all of your water is going to go on the ground. So if you're in your family room or your basement, you have to be prepared for that scenario, and just be prepared. It's not likely if you're careful, but that's something you have to watch. And that's it. Now, one more thing. When you're placing your unit, whether it be indoor, outdoor, or a greenhouse, well, the two rather, indoors, your lighting is going to be LED. So you'll have, but I have on mine, I have a Spider Farmer SF1000, draws 100 watts, and it covers a 3-foot square area that you can grow almost anything you want. Pulls 100 watts at the, or give or take, at the plug. So everywhere else, which would be a greenhouse or an unheated unit, you need a southern exposure or something like a southern exposure, obviously, because the sun's going to come over. So you can't, the sun never shines on this side over here, which is north, and over here it comes across during the daytime and shines quite a bit of the time. The other consideration, of course, is where houses sit and where trees sit. So you're trying to get a decent southern exposure. You have to get something. This is pretty good over here, which is not southern, but it still gets a pretty good shot, long enough I know from experience. So that's the other consideration you have to have. So if you can satisfy these things, the other part of it, which is preparing for the weather, cold weather, hot weather, wind, things like that, can be accommodated for each system individually. So, in conclusion, I want to talk about something that's kind of related that you really need to think about before you get started planning, and that's time. You know, how much time do you have to dedicate to this? How often are you gone? If you're someone who travels a lot or is out of town a lot, then this is probably not something you want to get into, because fish need to be fed. You know, you can make arrangements in the wintertime, not as much, but I would say, you know, I'm comfortable walking away from these systems for about 3 days. If I leave on Friday morning and feed the fish and come home Sunday night, everything's probably fine. But if you travel a lot, or if you just plain don't have any time, it's probably not a good deal for you. If you have less time, you can scale everything back. You know, you can start with a tiny little unit that takes very little time, and then if you really get into it, build up. The other thing is, and by the way, this is the tip of the day. I don't know if I said that or not. The other thing is, if you get some friends, I don't really have any, I have relatives, fortunately, like your camera person or videographer, excuse me, or your son, they can come over and feed your fish while you're gone and take care of your systems if you show you. So by all means, if you can interest somebody else in it, that's a good deal. So anyhow, I hope you gained something from this that you might be able to use. I'll see you next time.